It's 6 p.m. I'd like to call this regular village board meeting to order. Life has a way of throwing curveballs at us and presenting opportunities that nobody can prepare for and nobody's ready for. And from time to time, we face those unexpected and tragic events. And last week presented one of those as we lost a fellow trustee and a good citizen of the village of Chatham with the unfortunate passing of trustee Mao. It's been difficult for the family. It's been difficult for his friends. I think beyond the difficulty, one of the things to always remember, and it's been repeated, over and over through the tributes and through the phone calls and through the messages that have been left about trustee Mao, is at the root of everything he was a kind and generous person. To me personally, I was always taken by Matt's innate ability to just sense when I needed somebody to ask me how things were going, or tell me a joke when I needed to laugh. And without fail, every time that we spoke together, he always asked how my family was. And it's a very admirable trait for a person to have, and a difficult trait for a person to have. And no matter what conversation you were having with Matt or any debate that we faced up here as a board, at the end of the day, Matt was your friend, and you could debate for hours on end with him. And when you finished, as Trustee Detmers relayed to me, even if you were on opposite ends of the argument in complete disagreement with each other, Matt would turn to you and say, "You want to go next door and grab a beer or have some wings?" And that's the kind of person he was. He loved politics. He loved to be involved with the government. He loved his country. He loved our veterans, did all that he could to support them. And I would be hard pressed to find anybody that I would say loved our village more than trustee Mao did. So our hearts go out to the family, all the friends, all those that he touched in far too short of a lifetime. But we'll remember him, and those are the things that we'll remember him for, is his kindness, his caring, his commitment to our town, and being a good young man the whole time. If you would all please join me in a moment of silence in honor of trustee Mao. Thank you. Les, if I could ask a favor and you give me time to recover, can you lead the pledge for us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, could you take the roll?
Trustee Ferguson.
Here.
Trustee Charles.
Present.
Trustee Detmers. Here. Trustee Gerber.
Here.
Trustee Fletcher. Here. Village President Kimsey.
Present. Are there any public announcements this evening?
Just the Les Morgan with the Chatham American Legion, our fish fries. Our first one was a successful, and we're looking for several more until April 15th, every Friday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving to public comments. I'm going to break with our normal procedure here for a moment. We'll open public comments, but with respect of Matt's friends and family that are here with us tonight, What I would like to do is if you would like to give a public comment that is if and only about the resolution to recognize Matthew Mao, we'll give those first, and then we'll proceed to a vote, and then we'll reopen public comments for the rest of the village business at that time. So if anyone would like to comment regarding the resolution. At this time, I'd ask for a motion to bring to our table a resolution designating East Mulberry Street as Memorial Matthew Mao Street in honor of Trustee Mao.
I will make that motion.
Trustee Charles made a motion,
Second.
second by Trustee Ferguson. Anybody that can discuss anything that would like to? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Marty, Lisa, Megan, we have our deepest sympathy. Know that we're here at the village. We're here to offer you any support that we can. And we thank you for sharing Matt with us. We've appreciated it. So, thank you all. So, and you guys don't have to hang around.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now reopen public comments for the remainder of our agenda topics. As a reminder, the village board policy on public comments is a 5-minute time limit to speak to you for each person that wishes to address the board. First on the list of those that have signed up would be Mr. Pitcher.
Good, state your name.
My name is Nathan Pitcher, and I just want to say I'm here to speak a little bit about the solar. I've watched all the meetings and everything. I moved to Chatham 13 years ago, bought a house, got married, ended up with 4 kids. We wanted 2, but we ended up with 4. Built a house. You know, we're invested. There's a lot of people that are very, very invested in this community, and not just from a monetary standpoint, but you know, they got roots. I wasn't born here, but I'm here for a while now. One of the things we did later on after we built, we looked into various reasons to save money or to, you know, be environmentally conscious or whatever. And solar kind of came to me. I signed up for it. Just, I don't know why. It was one of those things where they'd give me a free demo or whatever. And anyway, a couple months later, 4 or 5 different estimates later, we ended up with it, installed it in 2020, in our 3rd year now. So I'm for it. It's helping our environment. I'm not going to get into that. I think everybody has their own opinions on that and where they stand. I just kind of want to say, hey, you know, there's a lot of folks that, you know, look for a good place to live. If I were to move again, for work or whatever reason, I would definitely look for, you know, schools. It's the reason we moved to Chatham. We could have moved anywhere. And, you know, availability and different local statutes like a positive solar, you know, policy. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say, and thank everybody for their time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Knox?
Can you state your name?
Michelle Knox. To write down my thoughts, so bear with me. Hello, President Kimsey, trustees, staff, and residents of Chatham. My name is Michelle Knox. I'm the owner of Wind Solar USA. I'm a member of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, the Downstate Caucus, the Muni Co-op Committee, which is a division of that, and Sustainable on the board of directors of Sustainable Springfield, Inc. Additionally, I have served on the Village of Awanago's board of directors for the past 20 years, an honor and responsibility that I take very seriously, as I know that all of you do. I'm sure back in 2016, I and a few others came to address the board at the time that you were looking to adopt a solar policy. At that time, we provided education, and I was very pleased at the receptivity of the board in terms of listening to what we had to offer. and ultimately adopt the suggested changes to the base policy that had been offered by the IMEA and IMUA. The result of that collaboration was a fair solar policy that the community could be proud of, and that I have personally touted the Village of Chatham for adopting on multiple occasions. Section 7 of the existing net metering policy from 2016 lists a penetration percentage of 5%, which has become a point of contention and I believe needs some clarification. So to start, we'll talk a bit about the investor-owned utilities. And I fully acknowledge that municipal utilities are a different animal, if you will, or a different energy offering. But Ameren and ComEd, previous to CEJA, also had penetration percentages, which were set as placeholders for evaluation of when the net metering policy should change. What the FEJA, which was CEJA's predecessor, said is that when the solar penetration percentage reached 3% of peak load, that would spark a study by the Illinois Commerce Commission to determine what the fair value of solar was. And then when that penetration percentage reached 5%, whatever was determined by the ICC would get implemented. And my phone went dead. Under CEJA, that changed, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And what it reads now is that net metering, retail net metering with an annual reconciliation will continue through January 1st of 2025, at which time another compensation rate for overproduction will be adopted and or a rebate will be implemented. So if we look at this, we want to please understand that the penetration percentage was not a placeholder for determining that no more solar installations could occur, which is what the current policy, 2 sentences at the end of the policy in Chatham Section 7 reads. As it reads now, it says, however, no new interconnections will be allowed until such time as the system peak grows such that net metered capacity is again no greater than 5% of the system's peak. So a simple tweak to those last 2 sentences of Section 7 could allow that policy to remain. And all that would need to be replaced is once the 5% penetration solar percentage is reached, as compared to the village's peak load, the village board will evaluate a fair solar credit to be applied to overproduction that may be something less than retail. It puts the opportunity for that evaluation back in the hands of the board to, at that time, determine what is fair and to implement that. Additionally, I've heard concerns about annual overproduction. The way that the village does it now is they let residents continue to net meter over the course of the year. You guys are truing up monthly and you're actually applying the credits to the bill, the utility bill, versus just letting those credits be banked. But in the end, it all works out the same. And then as of 12/31, that bank or those credits that were paid out and the consumption are looked at. And if there was overproduction, the community member gets charged back for what they were paid excessively. That is a concern. The goal and ambition of solar developers is to help residents, business owners to offset their own load, not to overproduce and be a power producer and benefit financially from it.
Michelle?
Yes.
You've reached the 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Dotson?
You state your name.
Nick Dodson. Thanks for having me. Again, my name's Nick Dodson. I'm with the Sangamon Valley Sierra Club. I want to address a couple things that were spoken about the last meeting by Gary Stevenson, Chief Operating Officer at the IMUA. He said that he was concerned about local control of utility, fairness, and equity. Okay, I'm going to go over a couple of those things. To his point, I would encourage the board to consider IMUA's incentives and motivations. Are they truly concerned about local control? Let's take a look at the IMUA track record. at the advice they've given their member communities about investing in fossil fuel generation? Would you question the wisdom of an agency that actively worked to sell their member communities on a coal plant that was more than $1 billion over budget and was abandoned by its original owners after promises of a super efficient clean coal generation were never going to happen long before that plant opened? Well, you don't have to look very far. You just have to look in Marissa. Not very far, just in southern Illinois. It's where Prairie State Coal Plant is now located. It's a town of about 1,400 people. Let me reiterate this. It's a fossil fuel burning property that was recommended by the IMUA, and it was $1 billion over budget. Do you know where else the Prairie State Coal Plant is highly ranked? It's the highest ranked polluter in the state of Illinois, and the 7th highest polluter in the entire United States of America. Consider this. The IMUA has positioned itself as a monopoly supplier for more than 30 communities. Is IMUA likely to cede any of its monopoly power to Chatham? Or are they likely to make recommendations that would keep them in their position as experts to a captive audience? To Mr. Stevenson's point about fairness and equity, he suggested that non-solar residents are or will be subsidizing solar residents. This is a claim made by other experts who are also supply monopolists. In other words, if everybody were to generate their own electricity, why would your community need IMUA, the entity currently responsible for supplying electricity? I would like to ask the IMUA to show this, quote, cross-subsidization exists. What about the value that solar owners add to the grid? What about the value of distributed generation? Do those investments not subsidize non-solar customers? If we want to talk about fairness and equity, why not focus on creating access to cheaper solar energy for low-income households or to renters? Illinois has 2 programs that exist for these very reasons: Community Solar and Solar for All, the latter of which is designed specifically for low-income consumers and provides a guaranteed savings of 50% on the supply portion of electric bills. In order to take advantage of these programs, Chatham would have to allow for power purchase agreements, and the IMUA explicitly discourages the use of power purchase agreements. That seems odd. The IMUA wants to remain the sole purchaser and provider of electricity. If the IMUA is concerned about fairness and equity, surely they would be open to figuring out how to make Chatham be able to take part of community solar and solar for all. So I just want to leave you for that.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Dozier?
Jason Dozier. President Kimsey, nice tribute.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, village trustees and President Kimsey. Thank you for your time. I know we've all spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks talking solar, and I'm sure all of you guys could probably end up somewhere and make a good decision now, as far as the differences of systems and such. I am thankful for Chatham's great solar policy. It's what allowed us to install solar in 2019 at our home. I can tell you with the change, I don't think I could make it work for myself. That's my situation. That's what, if I ran the numbers, it doesn't work for me in the amount of time. It would pay back, but it's longer than I would be willing to risk or roll the dice on staying in that home. The 20-year grandfather clause, legacy clause, whatever word we're using, works for me. That makes my system whole. It gets me close to my 25 years of use. Gets me to about 24, which is good. So I am thankful for that the board brought that back, or came back with that after the last meeting. One thing I am frustrated about, and when we left the last meeting, the plan was to come back and speak as a whole, as a community. When the meeting agenda came out, it was on the first meeting. That was upsetting. I don't feel like we were making a decision together. I know the board came up from 10 years to 20. That makes it work for me. It does. But it wasn't what we all left here, excuse me, under the impression of doing. One question, additional question I have, and I've posed to multiple trustees, it was 180 days from the passing of the legislation. Why are we in the final hours? Why are we down to the last month and putting it through? That's a big ask of mine. Additionally, we kind of spoke last time about notifying the current customers affected by the solar policy. I know I'm on the solar policy. I didn't receive anything from the village. I think customers that were impacted should have been notified of a change coming, or the agreement that they signed up for with the village. The things I would like to ask for, and this is myself, define the terms in the policies. Last time we changed from net metering to net billing. We just changed the word. Nowhere in any of the documentation did it explain that that was both ways across the meter, just by changing from the word metering to billing. And I've looked in the docs, I didn't find it. If I missed it, I apologize. But I cannot find it anywhere in there. Another thing I asked for, clarify the process. We sat here in the meeting 2 weeks ago. I don't know that most in the room had any idea how the billing process worked as far as reconciling monthly settle up at the end of the year. Correct the billing issues, we've all talked about that before. And I'm signed up, blocked off April 11th. I plan to be at the utility meeting, trustee. The other thing, let's promote what we're doing in green. I'm willing to give you my numbers. I promoted X amount of kilowatts last year. I get this size system. Promote it to people looking to come to Chatham. We're progressive. We're considering to be green. We got it. It doesn't cost anything to promote that on the website. To say we have a percentage, and I don't know what the percentage would be, but we have X amount of solar production in place. The other thing I ask is, we have so many ways to communicate anymore, whether it's text, phone, email lists. Use some of the Civic Ready. If there's a solar group, notify, provide a means to get that out to the customers. Final thing, again, the one-to-one for 20 years does work for my system. It does. Thank you for bringing that up, or whatever you want to call that. Meet in the middle. But it does work for me. It may not work for some. So, thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bertle, I have you on the list, but that's not one of our board agenda items at this time, so we'll hold you till the end, so not intentionally skipping. Mr. Ryman?
Good evening, and
Spell your name.
Ryman, R-E-I-M-A-N-N, first name Rick. Good evening, President Kimsey, all of you trustees. First, a thank you to President Kimsey, Trustee Detmers, Trustee Fletcher for reaching back with the email that I sent out a couple weeks ago. I appreciate that. To the rest of you, I look forward to collaborating with you in the future. I'm here to speak on the solar issue. I put my solar online April of 2020. I've got some numbers from 2021. I built it to provide 80% of the usage for my property for the year. For the year of 2021, I produced 10.73 megawatt hours. Based on what the bills showed, I sold back 6,175 kilowatt hours. That is $631.74 that I was credited on my bill. I'm still buying a considerable amount more electricity, and with right-sized, that's what you're going to see with most of the systems. If you were to cut that by 50%, you would take that credit from $631.74 to $315.87. That would increase my payback time by double, basically. Right now, we have 37 solar arrays in the village of Chatham, if my numbers are correct. That is a very low usage. We have 6,543 meters, according to the FOIA that I requested, at $11, and I can't find an exact number. I think it's between $11 and $12, but $11, the utility incurs a $71,973 influx of money, and at $12, $78,516 per month. I don't know what it costs to run a utility, but I'm sure that's a financial windfall, and that's before we even start selling electricity at double what we're paying for it. Solar helps to alleviate the load on the system when it's at its peak. It helps to keep the mechanisms that are in place to step down power cool. It helps transformers last longer. It helps the system stay healthy. I hope that through this, we can form a collaborative process. We've got some really smart people. I know Trustee Detmers was on a meeting last week. And there's some people out there that have some really good data points. And I would like for us to sit down, do a thoughtful, well thought out process instead of making a knee-jerk reaction that will change the way we do solar or any energy in the future. I would ask that you only vote to remove the cap, which is what's required by law tonight, and that we collaborate as a partnership, which is what we are. We're your residents. We pay taxes. We support the school. I have no children in school, but my taxes go to the support of the school. So I would ask that you consider that. I would encourage you not to change the current structure of 1-to-1, not to stifle the renewable energy options, promote renewable energy, and promote our community as a progressive community. And always remember our water. We're going to pay 50 years for a substandard water system that we've had to fix twice that has destroyed appliances. Keep your residents in mind. They're your partners. We are your partners. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the agenda who did not sign up? Sir, in the second row. You'll be next back there.
Thank you. I was a little hesitant. My name is Scott Allen.
What was the name?
Allen, Scott Allen, A-L-L-E-N. I was a little hesitant to speak given what I do for work. I work for an organization called the Citizens Utility Board, and we stay out of municipal and co-op utility matters because we're required by statute to deal with investor-owned utilities. But I did, through State Representative Will Guzzardi, have an inquiry from one of your residents last week. She wrote to him not knowing where else to turn because this issue had come up, and he forwarded that to the Citizens Utility Board. So I responded to that. For the last few years, I've worked pretty extensively on helping to craft what became the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. I feel like I have some expertise in that area. I don't so much want to speak to the policies of Chatham. I don't feel that's appropriate in my role, but to offer some caution, given what I study around the country and in the state to utility planning, I recognize that things are different for municipal utility and for co-op utilities. And I recognize the role that the Illinois Commerce Commission plays in forcing the investor-owned utilities to do better planning. And I see some pretty significant problems coming up if we can't work together to figure this out. And consumer protections are kind of my business. The concerns that your resident forwarded on to the Representative Guzzardi are understandable. And I've heard, I think Mr. Ryman addressed that tonight, that suppressing the ability for people and suppressing the incentives for people to go solar, I think is going to have a detrimental effect. It's counter to the goals that the state has set to reach 100% renewable energy by 2050. And my concern is, again, this is more of a personal concern from my experience. I'm not speaking on behalf of my organization, is that if we aren't prepared to receive that renewable energy by 2050, significant systems upgrades, then without regulation, without a body telling all of these individual utilities that they have to do some grid planning, I think that we're in for pretty rough times in the next 20, 30 years. Definitely don't want to see that happen to the city of Chatham. I've been in this area for the last 20 years or so, and I've seen this village come up from, I guess, maybe about half of the size that it was, and it's very impressive. I live in Springfield. I wish I could say the same things about my utility there, but I cannot right now. So yeah, I just wanted to offer that, say that CUB tries to stay out of these matters, but it was forwarded to us by one of the state representatives. So, and I kind of wanted to speak on her behalf here tonight. But thank you for indulging my comments.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Good evening, all. My name is Marty Monacle, like the pizza. Wish I had some for you. First of all, thank you all for all the hard work that you do. I'm going to pretend tonight that I'm going to reward you all for all the hard work you do, and we're all going to go to this amazing restaurant. We're going to get all dolled up, and we're going to go out to eat, and we're going to really look forward to it because we're really hungry. And when we get to this restaurant, we sit down, we pour over the menu, and we order. And we're so hungry, and we're waiting for our food, and all of a sudden the manager shows up, and he says, hey, if you don't eat and pay your bill in the next hour, we're going to charge you $150 to $100 for the rest of your life every month. Sounds really unfair, doesn't it? You have no choice but to cancel your order because you don't know when the food's coming. You don't know when the bill is coming. And I bring you to make this point that in this scenario, you are the restaurant, and Ryan Crawford is the manager who has to deliver the bad news. You are crippling every single person right now who is investigating going solar. They are being told that, well, you could try to go solar, but you better have all your paperwork in and everything completed. We don't know the date. We don't know what the net metering might be, but you have basically hamstrung everybody at this time. I represent several of your residents who are trying to go solar at this time, and they're extremely frustrated by the lack of clarity and ambiguity over the process. So I have one ask, that whatever decision you make, there really ought to be a point at which there's a date in the future, and if you have your application in by that date, boom, you're grandfathered in if you decide to make changes. But the current policy, as we're being told, is you have to have the application, you have to have all the CAD designs, you have to have every single thing in, and that's out of the homeowner's control. So I'm asking you, the professional way to do this, if there are changes, set that date way out there. Make there be a very clear statement of when you have permission to be grandfathered in. And then at that point, you have a whole year to finish your project to still be grandfathered in. But if you don't have the application in on that date, then you might miss out. But at least you'll have some clarity and you get to enjoy that food and not worry about your credit card being billed $100 for the rest of your life. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Bob Croteau, C-R-O-T-E-A-U. I'm retired from City Water, Light and Power the last 36 years. I worked in the Energy Services Office trying to provide fair and beneficial programs for our customers. We did develop very good solar policy. But it seems that the policy that you're working with has been developed one-sided. It's the IMEA, which is a fossil fuel mentality business, has taken what is, when solar first started becoming popular, the fossil fuel industry jumped right on this and they said, we got to cut out solar whatever it takes. So they came up with a lot of fees and a lot of draconian methods of trying to do this. So I feel, as I've listened to all this, it sounds like this policy was developed behind the scenes with them dictating to you what you should be doing when you don't even have to do anything yet. I mean, there's no damage to Chatham's economics systems or whatever. And I would argue that maybe some more time is taken to come up with maybe some consultants from the renewable energy side. It sounds like you're there, as I did talk about, their nationally recognized consultant was basically a fossil fuel consultant. They maybe deal with these other aspects, but they're looking at things that are not realistic in terms of primarily the cost to the grid. You know, there's the solar is supporting the grid. It's not putting a burden on the grid. I know you want to spread the costs out amongst everybody, and maybe that's the more fair way of doing it. But I just would like to see that somehow this policy designed by the IMEA is designed to kill solar. It is designed to make it unaffordable and to stop it in its tracks. And I just hope that everyone consider that fact down the road. We really need this renewable energy at this time especially. And I don't think there's enough conversation as to the economics of it all, and would hope that you would delay putting in that kind of a policy till more input could be had from the rest of the industry. And I hope it's not unanimous if you do vote that way. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Philip Ross, ROSS. I came here tonight, as many of you, trying to have an open mind. I didn't want to rehash arguments that have already been made, so I may meander a little bit, and I apologize in advance. I think that the important thing when we consider the policies going forward is how it affects residents and how it affects the town. Currently, there's a small number of residents that have solar. And while our solar doesn't affect the finances of the city greatly currently, a change to the 1-to-1 would greatly affect us personally. Now, really what I think we should think going forward is the compound effect of any decisions that we make. There's two directions. We can make solar more affordable and more accessible, or less affordable and less accessible. The state wants to be 100% renewable within a generation. That might sound like a long time, but a small change now, even just changing the rate plan, will have a compound effect over the number of people that accept solar, that purchase solar, that can produce solar, not just for themselves, but also for the city. Because it's important to remember, right now, it's less than 1% of residents. The state wants to get to 100%, or maybe 80%. Whatever the number is. If you get to that point 10, 20, 30 years from now, think about the cost savings to the city. Yes, you still have the expense of maintaining the lines and the transmission and all of that. But if you don't actually have to buy the power from a big utility, if it's being produced locally, ultimately that's going to be huge savings, not just for the city, but for all of the residents, even those that don't have solar, because they don't have to pay that extra cost on their bills. So I just want to give you a slightly different perspective, something else to think about, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone additional? Yes.
Alan Davis, I live here in Chatham on Hurstbourne neighborhood. I just had a solar system installed, and I just want to bring up the fact that these systems are not cheap. There's maintenance costs that are associated long-term with having them on your roofs. It's not free to us as a provider of the power. So I would just ask that it's considered that if it's a lesser rate than 1-for-1, that it's not drastic. Maybe there's a room for a little bit of room in there, but long-term, these systems are going to have to get replaced eventually. I believe it's a considerable amount of money just to take them off, put them back on when you need a new roof. So the folks here in Chatham that have already invested, it's not like we're just going to be getting free money forever. We're going to have to pay again eventually. So I'd like for everyone to consider that also.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Last call. All right. I appreciate your professionalism and respect for our rules and how we have to operate here. So thank you all for participating. We have no old business. Item 2 now under new business is an ordinance adopting the revised net billing policy and interconnection agreement with the customer generating electricity. Could I have a motion to bring this to the floor?
I'll move.
Trustee Detmers has made a motion to have a second. Second by Trustee Ferguson. The policy as presented, what it does provide, and I want to make sure that these things are clear to all those that are here, it does maintain a one-to-one retail credit for all existing solar installations, as well as those that are energized by December 31st of 2022. It extends that one-to-one for such legacy systems for 20 years from that date to 12/31/2042. At the same time, it adopts a prospective-looking policy that establishes the rate at which the village will repurchase excess energy provided by solar installation, and adopts a credit of 1.5 times the calculated IMUA fair solar credit. So those things are the key points of what's included here. Trustee Devers, did I miss any of them?
No, I think that's obviously one of them. The removal of the cap obviously is another element of that change.
Our current policy does have a cap on the number and site and the amount of the load that can be generated. That is one of the provisions in the CEJA, whereas any customer, any resident would have the right to be able to do that. We remove our cap so that we remove that obstacle and the potential of hitting that obstacle from our policy at the same time. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I think we owe it to our citizens to discuss this a little bit more publicly. I think many of you know or have spoken to you personally, or some of us have spoken to you personally, but I will tell you that a great deal of thought's gone into the proposal as it sits. Maybe not as much thought as you'd like, or maybe not in the direction that you'd like, but ultimately we have thought about this a great deal. Hopefully you've seen efforts by this board to try to understand the complexities better than what we did when we originally discussed it. I think I've learned a ton. I know that other trustees have as well. So there were a number of items mentioned in public comment. I think I'd like to just touch on a few of them that I wrote down, if that's okay. First, I appreciate all of those that invested in solar. I think it was a good move, and I think the benefits of solar will be greatly found and appreciated in the latter years. And what I mean by that is as the age of the system progresses, I understand that there's degradation of the solar panels. However, the variance, the cost avoidance, I think, continues to escalate as our retail electric rate escalates, right? So at 11.6 or 0.1169 as the effective kilowatt rate today, the savings of having solar is the number of kilowatts that you consume directly out of your system, right? So the number of kilowatts times the retail rate you would have paid, 1169, that's one element of the savings of solar. As that 1169 continues to rise, as I expect it would through inflation and through increased cost, that cost avoidance becomes larger and larger and larger. So while I appreciate that some might have analyzed that their payback period is lessened by the proposal or their theoretical proposal, or their theoretical payback period would lengthen, I still think that having solar now and having solar at any point in the future shows great financial benefit to the home, even with this proposal as it stands. There has been a lot of confusion about what the proposal is. Again, President Kimsey just clarified the major points. When I sat down with some residents and actually walked them through their usage, I think that it kind of hit home a little closer that, hey, this isn't killing solar. It definitely could provide a negative impact depending on your usage. And Dan, I don't know if it'd be possible, but I emailed you 2 items. If you could open up this one here. Yes, please. So I worked with Jason Dozier. He had a great model to start with. I changed it a little bit, but there are 2 customer examples here, redacted the information that represents who those customers are. But I'd like to just walk through what this would actually mean. But before I do that, I need to preface that the customers that have solar energized before the end of this year, this wouldn't apply to them for another 20 years. So those folks that do have solar installed now and until December 31st, 22, the policy ultimately is exactly as it is today. There's no change for 20 years. And what will electric look like? What will this board look like? What will the policy look like in 20 years? I'm not exactly sure, but I bet it's probably different than what it looks like today. So what I've attempted to illustrate here is in row 2, you see the current village retail price per kilowatt. Again, this is for residential use. That's what the scope of this conversation is today. IMUA did an analysis with their consultant that suggests the variable cost element of the village's total cost from IMEA, the variable element, is 0.0489 kilowatts per hour. That's in cell B4. The board, after having heard your concerns and have had numerous conversations with you all, understand how that could be a hindrance to potential future solar investors in Chatham. And we've said, hey, we want to take a stance. And while our advisor's suggesting that we compensate at 0.0489 for the 2022 season, we want to compensate more than that. Why? Well, because most of us believe solar is the right move, and we want to move green, and we want to help incentivize solar. Now, I do obviously understand that the proposal hurts it in a similar way, so I'm not ignorant to that point. So this particular customer, this is actual usage. In rows 10 and 11, you can see the solar that they've exported back to the grid in row 10, and the traditional electric that they've purchased from the grid in row 11. So if anybody wants this spreadsheet, I'll send it to you, and you can throw your own numbers in there. This comes directly from the utility office, so it's really easy to paste your data in those yellow fields. But you can see in January of 2020, which is in column B, that this particular customer exported 306 kilowatts while they imported 605 kilowatts. So they effectively generated about 47% of what they purchased from the village. If you were to offer the existing net metering policy, their charge amount would be $41.03, which again is the delta of 351 kilowatts multiplied by the effective retail rate of $11.69. If we were to adopt the IMUA's proposed rate of 0.489 for the solar credit, fair solar credit, then their bill would go up to $61.84. However, the board is proposing 1.5 times the IMUA rate, which would make their effective bill $54.36. So you can see the difference there in 15, 16, 17, what it would look like today, what it would look like with IMUA, and what it would look like with this proposal. And if you were to scroll to the far right, Dan, you'll see the overall, if this proposal is adopted, then this particular customer's usage for 2020, the cost would increase by $331. Sorry, they would increase from $60 to $331, which is a change of $271. So effectively, you could say that if this existing legacy customer were a standard customer who adopted solar after 23, their bill would go up about $20 a month for their particular usage. If you were to scroll down, Dan, this same exact customer provided their 2021 data, and the white line, which is in row 28, in 2021, this customer didn't have any usage expense at the end of the year. And it's ultimately because they produced more solar to the grid than they purchased. So under net metering, this customer owes nothing for their electric usage for 2021. If we were to adopt the billing mechanisms that have been discussed and the IMUA rate as is, their bill would go to $385, or this board's proposal would be to $190. So again, that's less than $15 per month. Again, I don't want to suggest that $15 isn't important or $20 isn't important, because I'd love to have $20. But I also just want to be fair with respect to, could this policy kill solar? You know, obviously we each have our own opinions, and I do understand the compounding effect that it would have. But when I work through actual usage data with actual customers, I personally have found that the variance isn't incredibly significant. Dan, if you were to switch to the second tab, I'm not going to go through it all. Sorry, the second tab on the existing model. Yep, thank you. This is a separate customer, same exact scenario. You can see their impact in row 16 for the IMUA's proposed annual adjustment. Yep, a little to the right, Dan, thank you. So this customer in 2020, if you followed IMUA, their cost would go up $324. If you followed the board's proposal, it's up $207 for the year. Not per month, but for the entire year. And then in 2021, this customer's impact would be $233 or $234 with the board's proposal. So again, that's right about $20. Again, reminder, the folks in the legacy group would not even see this impact. They would see no change for the next 20 years. And in that 20 years, on the 20th year, that's when I think the variance between the retail rate, the cost of, I'll call it the cost avoidance, which is your usage that you pull from your grid before the village even knows about it. So that's one item I want to talk through. Just, again, I can send you this model if you want to throw your own usage through it. I understand that it would be different for every customer. Some might be better, some might be worse. One other item I wanted to mention, Dan, if you can pull up my second thing, is that it was discussed several times that solar is producing most at the time the grid needs it the most. And while I understand, you know, the little bit I know about solar suggests that around noon is the best output of the systems on the sunniest of days. And what I've seen is this traditional shaped bell curve where, you know, it starts at 6 or 7 a.m., works its way up until noon, and then works its way down until 6 or 7 p.m. So when I hear that solar produces when the grid needs it the most, I would expect our grid's demand to follow that similar pattern, a similar bell curve. But what you see here is the electricity delivered from IMEA to Chatham over the last 3 years by hour. And what those experts had told us and what the grid operators of Chatham have told me is that the grid is at its peak when it's dinner time and folks are home from work and home from school and throwing on the local news channel. And that's exactly what you see here. If you see this chart, again, the time is along the bottom there and the number of kilowatts purchased from the villages along the top. And you can see that the lowest hour is, 3 to 4 a.m., whereas the highest hour is 6 to 7 p.m. So I just wanted to at least mention that, not that I'm suggesting your opinion of solar is different than mine, but I just wanted to see that correlation myself, and it varied a little bit from what I was hearing. With respect to, we want to see clear and concise data for those customers considering solar today. Again, I just want to reiterate that if you were to have your solar installed by December 31st, 2022, then you would be a member of installed and online and energized by the end of 2022. Then you'd be in the legacy group that has the one-to-one for the next 20 years. If your system's energized after December 31st, 22, then you're part of the standard group in which this proposed 1.5 times IMUA rate applies. I do agree that the village should strive to improve communication. For those of you that have solar, and for those of you that are considering solar, obviously it'd be a little bit more difficult, but I do appreciate everyone getting invested in and understanding and being part of our discussions. With respect to how the billing will work, anybody that knows better, please jump in, but my understanding is that on a monthly basis, we have for solar customers, we have a meter that essentially has two dials. One calculates the usage that you import from the village. The other dial will monitor and measure the the electricity that you export from your grid back to the village. So you could see those two turn. They shouldn't turn at the same time, but you should see those two turn as you use the solar. And how will the billing work? Well, essentially on a monthly basis, billing will be conducted, and for all of the energy that you've imported from the village, you will be billed the proper retail rate for your application. So right now, it's retail residential is $11.69 per kilowatt. So you'll be billed for if you could bring up my example real quick, just I think the model.
First one?
Yes, please. So in cell B23, or anywhere, sorry, we'll just go B10. So what would happen for billing is the solar exported from your system back to the grid. If you were, let's just say you were part of the standard group that has the discounted fair solar rate, again, the rate that's found in B5. If billing were to be conducted, then you would get a credit of $306 kilowatts times 0.734. So think of that 0.734 as a negative. So you get billed for 306 times negative 0.734, and then you'll be billed for the traditional consumption of 657 multiplied by the standard rate of 11.69. So every month you get credited for your push, you get billed for your pull, and those two will net out depending on how much you owe. You might, like in column D, you might end up with a credit, depending. And then you would work that credit off. At the end of 2022, at the end of every year, that's when the utility gals reconcile and say, okay, anybody with a negative balance, that balance is written off, and everybody starts the new year with a zero balance, assuming you paid your bill. I do want to say that the board's considered IMEA's motivations. I think it's important to clarify that they're a non-for-profit, that the village is also a non-for-profit. So even if we were to make hundreds of thousands of dollars on solar customers' backs for electricity, that money stays within Chatham. The money stays within the electric fund. It's not like any profit that could be potentially made is spent on bonuses or anything like that. The monies that are generated from the village, both by traditional users and by solar users, those monies stay within the electric fund, and they're used only for electric expenses. They're not brought over to the water department or brought over to the parks department where I'd like to spend it. That was just a joke. Let's see. There was a lot of comments. I'm sure I didn't get them all today, but we did hear you. We did try to come up with a compromise, because while it's important that we serve you and any future solar customers, I think it's equally as important that we service the customers that buy traditional electricity. And what I mean by that is the fixed costs for our network, for our infrastructure, to be able to provide power to every user, not because you solar users, unless you have an extensive battery bank, solar users need the grid as well. Right? Like at 3 a.m., when solar's not producing according to that bell curve, there's still a demand from solar customers as is a demand from the traditional electric customers. So we have to have the infrastructure. That infrastructure is incredibly expensive. And to be fair to all residents of Chatham, all 6,543 meters, we have to allocate the cost of the grid proportionally and appropriately. And that's why there's a reduction of the fair solar credit from the 1-to-1 retail to the 0.734 currently proposed. I've talked a lot. Does any of the board members want to ask me a question, or do you guys want to make any statements? Or
that was comprehensive, and I really appreciate. I know that you've been working on this, and I know that we have all spoken to the community, and I have spoken to more than just the solar customers. I've spoken to the electric department, and I've spoken to attorneys on both sides, and this has been an endeavor that it's an enlightening endeavor, and I have always supported going green. I know that we have no choice. We're going to do this, and I see this as the first step, the first decision. We have to do something. And I feel like we've made adjustments. I feel like we have done our homework. And for me, I see it as it's something that is going to be adjusted and changed over time as we allow for more solar customers. And so I appreciate everybody's work. I really appreciate the input from the community. It's really valuable. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to talk to everyone, but trust me, I've been talking about this for, we all have now, several weeks. And I just want to say thank you.
And I'm going to echo the same thing. Dewey, you did an amazing job on your spreadsheets.
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
Sometimes we
Jason.
joke you about your spreadsheets, but we're
Well,
happy
Jason,
that
this
you
is
always
Jason's
give them
base,
to us.
so, yep.
We have listened and we have heard, and we may not all walk out with exactly what everybody wanted to come in tonight, but I do feel like we've compromised and we listened, and it's exciting to see that you show up and you have views, and we encourage you to come back and share your views. I think the world today is two different sides, and we're all divided, and I think everyone in this room pretty much shows that we can be in one room at one time and have conversations. And I hope that, I have learned a ton about kilowatts in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I feel like we all came out of this a whole lot better. And I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to have this discussion and to be able to share our opinions. And maybe we're a little bit different than the world. We actually can sit in a room, have different opinions, and at the end of the night, still go have a beer and wings and be okay. So I appreciate that ability from you and from the board members.
Well, and I'd like to reiterate, Trustee Detmer's amazing job with the numbers as usual. But we, like everybody said, we did listen. And the thing that, you can go back to is we're going off an ordinance that was created in 2016. If things aren't going well here and we don't see solar growth and it can always be addressed by a future board if we're on here as well. So it's not like this is the end all be all, like Dewey said, in 20 years. This is all going to look very different, I would imagine, on the entire landscape of the state of Illinois. And there could be legislation from the statewide where we've got to adjust an ordinance here coming up anyway. So this is just for now, and we thought we would we would try to, make the 37 that have already made that commitment, and then anyone wanting to move, in the short term, grandfathered. And we tried to compromise, and then we tried to also protect, our infrastructure and that kind of stuff, and address those concerns, because one-to-one going forward, if everybody goes solar, isn't feasible at this point. It doesn't mean it won't be in the future. And we definitely don't want to negatively impact solar. None of us are anti-solar up here. And thank you again.
Further?
Yeah, one more.
Okay.
Dewey, wow. Man,
Yes.
down there.
Oh, sorry, but
No.
put everybody to sleep now.
No, that was amazing. You know what? One thing I learned tonight, last week, 2 weeks ago, is how passionate so many of our village members are, and how much they care. And I think when you guys were in classrooms, I know where you guys sat. You guys all sat in the front row. If you know what that means, I'll tell you after. But those are my kind of people. And as I said 2 weeks ago, you know what? I wanted to put solar on my house and my mother-in-law's house in Arizona for years. And actually, this sparked me to learn more, to understand more. And with the proposal out there, it's not stopping me to want to still go make this happen. You know, I still won't say I'm 100% knowledgeable on every detail on Dewey's chart. But everything that I need to know to make a sound decision, I think we've studied long enough and understand where we need to go. Because what I feel is many of you will hopefully lead our committees as this grows, because I do think we're going to need that. We're going to need to come together to figure out what this has got to look like down the road. This is just what we need to do right now. It could change in 6 months. It could change in a year. It could change soon. And to be able to put it on websites and to make it big time and to work with the companies to make sure that all of our houses can do this, it's going to take all of us. And I see who's going to help us do that right here in this room tonight. So thank you for all of your time and consideration, your emails, your conversations. I appreciate all of you. So thank you very much.
Mr. Clerk?
Trustee Charo.
Yes.
Trustee Detmers.
Yes.
Trustee Ferguson.
Yes.
Trustee Fletcher.
Yes.
Trustee Gerger.
Yes.
Could I have a motion to bring the consent agenda to the table?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Charles made a motion, second.
Second.
Second by trustee Fletcher. Any discussion regarding the warrants or the minutes? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk?
Trustee Ferguson.
Yes.
Trustee Charo.
Yes.
Trustee Detmers.
Yes.
Trustee Gerger.
Yes.
Trustee Fletcher.
Yes.
Are there any additional public comments on any village business? And still not missing you, we're going to do a committee meeting next, okay? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn the board meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Charles made a motion.
Second.
Second by trustee Ferguson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Board meeting stands adjourned. Trustee Detmers.
Thank you all for coming. Anybody that wishes to stay, obviously, is welcome. The solar is not on the committee of the whole agenda, if that's what you're interested in.
Sit down and chat for a bit. Sit down and chat for a bit.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to go ahead and call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Clerk Holden, could we please take roll?
Trustee Fletcher.
Present.
Trustee Gerger.
Here.
Trustee Detmers.
Here.
Trustee Charo.
Present.
Trustee Ferguson.
Present.
Are there any public comments regarding agenda topics? I think we have one. Zach Bertle.
Yeah, Zach.
If you could please state your name.
Zach Bertle, B-U-R-T-L-E. My name's Zach Bertle, and I represent the Chatham Conservation Society. Since last year, we've been advocating for the proposed pond project off of South Main Street to move forward. Our motive originally was twofold. The first was to create a unique park in Chatham that would focus on nature rather than just recreation. After talking with the village administration last fall, we mutually agreed that in addition to the existing plans for the park laid out in the most recent Parks Comprehensive Plan, surrounding the pond with native wildflowers and plants would both create a scenic area for the village's residents and create a habitat for pollinators and other native animals. The second motive was to alleviate flooding that is causing damage in Community Park. Much of the area around the bike path is eroding away because of the significant amount of water that flows through the park. In particularly rainy times, it also renders a large part of the park unusable. A third concern has come to our attention recently that is affecting many village residents in the Parkview neighborhood and creating major safety concerns on village property. In the last couple of weeks, I've spoken with seven different households in that neighborhood off of South Main. Their concerns included flooded yards, flooded crawl spaces, long-term stagnant water, and an open pit next to a bus stop. At least one of these residents approached the village over 2 years ago. Scott Steiner lives on Parkway Drive in Parkview. His backyard backs right up to the village's electric shop and storage area off South Main. His backyard is standing water literally all summer that is full of mosquitoes, and his crawl space floods so badly that he was quoted $15,000 to fix it. You have the video that I sent.
Video or the, okay. Give me a second here.
So his property backs right up to village property, and this is all the water that comes under his fence from village property. Trustee Detmers attempted to help him, but he and Mr. Snyder were told that it isn't their problem because the water is coming onto their land from a farmer's field nearby. And do you have the that picture you just showed?
Okay, you done with this then?
Yeah, that's fine. So this is village property, the village electric shop and other storage areas. So this is where the water, his yard is right at the bottom of this picture, basically. And it floods across the road and just goes straight into his property. From this image, you can see that a large amount of water collects directly on village property, and the village's solution to remove it is to drain it into the residents' yards. Most of the houses that have a southern-facing backyard and the houses along South Main in this neighborhood have the same issue because their backyard is used the same way. The area around the entrance to Parkview presents yet another issue. The entrance of this neighborhood is a bus stop for the many children that live in this neighborhood. Right next to the bus stop is an open pit with two large culverts opposite sides from each other. That's the last picture. Yeah. At the beginning of big rainfalls, this pit becomes an extremely dangerous and high-speed stormwater collection area. Children playing in the area could easily be sucked into the culvert with horrific consequences. If you search any of this online, you immediately see multiple stories about cities throughout America that have paid out hundreds of thousands to the families of victims of those cities' negligence. Not only is this open pit an issue, but the drainage through Community Park is insufficient and causes a backup of stormwater after storms. This causes the streets in Parkview to back up as well. In addition to this picture, I also received videos of children playing in the flooded streets after dark. These were all sent to me by someone who lives near this interest and works for DCFS. They are mandated to report and have already reported these obvious safety issues to the state of Illinois. I do not believe it is the village's responsibility to babysit the children that live within it, but I wholeheartedly believe that it is the village's responsibility to address obvious dangers within it. I bring all this up because I know the village is receiving over $1.5 million in funds from the federal coronavirus legislation. One of the recommended uses of these funds is for infrastructure improvements like stormwater management. When I recently spoke with village administration a few weeks ago, I inquired about the status of these funds and the status of the pond project. The enthusiasm for the pond project seemed to have waned since we had spoken last fall. Today, I'm asking the village board to make this project a top priority so that the village can adhere to its responsibilities in safety and its responsibilities as a good neighbor to its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments regarding village business on the agenda? All right, I'd entertain a motion to move the consent agenda forward.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by trustee Charlotte, seconded by trustee Ferguson. All in favor of approving the minutes of the prior meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed? There are no items under old business. Under new business, item 1, CMT engineering updates.
So just want to take a quick minute, to provide, a few thoughts regarding Trustee Baum. Worked with him for several years now, and, there's no words that I can provide that make anything different or better. But what I can say is that, I appreciated working with him throughout the years, and, I know he appreciated CMT's efforts and, my efforts as well. And, one of the things that, he always did was kept the politics out of the engineering and just wanted us to do a good job and improve the village. And, it's one of the things that he would always say is, whenever we had a savings on a project, it's, well, did you leave anything out? Did we not do the full project? Because I want to make sure it was done right. And, he always had that enthusiasm. I'd see him out in public and he's standing at Meijer grocery store, and here he'd come running across to catch up on things and see how things were doing from a public infrastructure standpoint. And he wanted to know. and he wanted to know how things worked, and he was interested, and he was curious, and just like we talked about today, just learning new things. And, I guess, my biggest regret is not telling him. And, that's kind of where I'm at, and that's kind of the lesson that I've kind of learned from him. And sometimes we need to take a step back and appreciate what we have, and, tell the people that, what they mean to us. So just want to take a quick moment. So.
Thank you.
On to the business at hand, I guess. Couple of things going on with the village. One is we're working with the Parks Department on doing some replacement of pavement on the bike path. Got a section of that started yesterday, and hope to have that paved in by tomorrow in anticipation of high usage in the spring here. So that'll be wrapping up, and working with Dustin and his crew on that to get that done. We've also been working with village staff in terms of looking at funding opportunities, grants, and application of those monies with potential projects. We'll be closing out last year's MFT program, and then looking forward to projects that we're going to be accomplishing here this year with MFT. And as part of that, I believe Pat passed out a list of projects for consideration, and I would like to step through those and just kind of go through a list of items here and answer any questions regarding some of those items that we're looking at. So, there's three major sources of funding that we have at our discretion right now. One is motor fuel tax. One is the ARPA funds that were just alluded to. And then the Rebuild Illinois funding, which is related to roadway type infrastructure funding. So we've grouped a couple of different projects in this, and we've sat down with village staff, and we've looked at kind of what were the higher priority projects that we want to present to the board for consideration. And the projects that we have here, obviously there's always more projects and funding available. So the projects that we do have listed here do exceed the funding available, but we're looking for, assistance from the board and village staff to prioritize those projects and look at what we can accomplish here over the next couple of years relative to what we have to work with. So under motor fuel tax, one of the big things that we did identify is we're going to focus on the larger usage roadways, higher ADT roadways, put the money towards those, work on the worst ones, and get those up to par. And then we'll start focusing on the secondary roadways from there. So with some of the main roadways under work or completed, the next one that we see on the list is Gordon Drive, and that's going to be from Walnut up to Oakbrook Drive, and that would be a mill and overlay with the shoulders out there. We're going to continue with concrete patching and looking at not only using village crews to do that work on the secondary roads, but there's been an indication from the village staff that they're just not as adept or well equipped to do the primary roads with the patching. So they're struggling with a lot of the maintenance of traffic and the safety aspects of that. So they've made a request that maybe we pursue some of the MFT funds to put that work out to bid and have contractors that are more adept to doing, higher volume roads like Plummer Boulevard and, those type of facilities that, are a little bit more dangerous for them to work on. The secondary roadways, they're picking those off just fine, but they feel that they're just a little stretched too thin and they're out there too long getting the work done. So we're going to look at putting some of that work out to bid. We're going to have the annual maintenance items that we see every year, salt and plowing and street sweeping and, all those type of items that we incur on an annual basis. Request for paved shoulders along Walnut. We're seeing the edge of the pavement on Walnut starting to deteriorate, fall apart. Walnut is a good roadway, but we want to maintain that and, retaining the side of the pavement with shoulders in that location would help. Intersection reconstruction, there's some concerns about failed pavement, the drivability at Walnut and Savannah, and putting that on the list. And then, another major roadway would be South Park, mill and overlay, similar to Gordon Drive, and that would be Walnut south to Spruce, are kind of the big identified projects under motor fuel tax.
Do you mind if I make a few comments at least? Sure. So first, I was wondering about Plummer with respect to MFT. Are we going to look to? Sorry if that's already here. Yeah. Okay. Rebuilding Illinois Fund. Whole Plummer. Secondly, we just received this tonight, so I didn't have a lot of time. But paved shoulders along Walnut. Item B. Weren't we hoping to expand Walnut, and would paved shoulders make sense in the long term if we were going to push it to be wider?
So one of the things that we'd look at is, Walnut would ultimately go to an urban section that would tie, both on both sides of the, that segment of the roadway. You have curb and gutter on one side, curb and gutter on the other side. It's a rural section in the middle. One of the things that we've been working with village staff is, hopefully there'd be development at some point that would help incur the cost of that. But paved shoulders, we would definitely be looking at doing a full depth pavement that could accommodate future traffic as a lane. So if we did 4-foot or 6-foot paved shoulders, we would look at the roadway profile in there, make sure that for longitudinal slopes that you could put curb and gutter on that and still have sufficient drainage, because with a rural roadway, you could essentially pave that at 0% slope and the water would still run off. At 0% slope, a curb and gutter, the water has nowhere to go. And then you have inlets every 2 feet all the way along. So we would look at that in terms of longitudinal slope, see if that's appropriate, and then, make adjustments as needed. If it would work, then we would do a full depth pavement. If it wouldn't work, we'd probably scale that back to something that would just confine the edge of the pavement so we're not losing that from,
erosion,
traveling and erosion and so forth.
Okay, and then my last comment, and then other trustees obviously have items too, but I understood that, we would probably allocate the significant amount of the MFTs towards the major roadways, and while I think that makes sense, I still want to make sure that we're utilizing and updating that roadway grading system. And then I guess, just personally, I feel like there are a lot of secondary or tertiary roads that are super sketchy, and I don't ever go near these people's houses because, I don't want to bottom out. But I'm joking. But what I mean is that I feel like there should still be, 25 or 30% of the MFTs that are focused on the worst of the secondary and the worst of the tertiary. And because I think like our major roadways could eat our dollars every single year, and we're never going to make progress in those other locations. So I just think the board should look to adopt a policy where, a certain percent allocation of those roads. And I realize that it may be 1/1000th of the amount of travel that's gone down that road. I still think it's appropriate and owed to the citizens of those areas. So I know you didn't mention it here, but I think it would be worth looking at, and it might be a lot of money, or maybe there could be some fairly inexpensive changes that could mean a lot to those families.
And that's, similar to what we've done on Oak Brook, where it's been a, piecemeal, get a half a block at a time and just kind of chip that away. I know where the worst roads are in the village. I'm reminded of it often and what we can do with it. But also looking at, I would love to fix those at the cost of several $1 million. And
yeah,
you guys want to drop that in my lap, I'll get them all fixed.
Yeah, we'd love to. I don't know how to do it yet. Maybe just play a lottery or something. But no, I just do think it's important that, because even I think, certain areas of Oak Brook that we just replaced might have been better than some other areas of Chatham. Now, again, I respect and understand the number of cars traveled are not nearly the same, but.
Understand. Okay, moving down the list here, the second category was, more of the open-end projects, for the ARPA funds, America Rescue Plan Act funds, that were alluded to earlier. And what we've done is, met with village staff again, looked at the priority, and these are funds that qualify under any of the general expenditure, for the village. So, very little restriction associated with what those funds can go towards, whereas MFT has to follow a process, has to go through IDOT and so forth. These are a little bit more open-ended, and they follow the village's procurement processes. So under the roadway category, is identified that traffic signal upgrades at Walnut and Gordon and Walnut and Park, indicating that the vehicle detection systems there have not worked for a very long time. The other one is village-wide roadway pavement marking. Another one is oil and chip, the original town, both the east and west side. And then last one is also overlap of motor fuel tax, but additional pavement patching on the primary roadways that the village staff just isn't equipped to handle. The water department indicated that their two top priority projects are backup power supply to the ground storage tank and then backup power supply to the elevated tank. Any kind of a power outage, the village is at their mercy in terms of not being able to pump water. So those are high priority items. The other one that's a priority for the water department is upgrade to the SCADA system. It's a older, antiquated system, difficult to get parts. Lots of, breakdowns associated with that system. Even talking to Dustin today, they're scrambling a little bit to, override the system to manually turn on the pumps to fill up the water tanks. So it's, one of those things where it's constant monitoring and things go wrong in the night and you wake up with an empty tank, and that's not good. So
The note there, split 5-year program, does that mean that the cost would be broken into 5 years?
So what was told to me from Dustin was, they have a single cost, one lump sum, purchase it all at one time, or that could be phased in over a 5-year period. And SCADAware, the system that we currently work with, can upgrade the system on a modular basis. So it would be upgrade the elevated tank system, then upgrade the ground storage tank system, then upgrade the base system, then upgrade the communications, then upgrade. So it's a 5-year, it could be split into 5 years and, pulled into, either using these funds or using the water funds to do that. So it's either lump sum or could be spaced out into 5 individual projects to meet that.
And the estimate we see here is the lump sum.
That is correct. Water main improvements at Walnut S-Curve. A while back we did look at having a locating company come in and locate that transite pipe that's underneath the lake there. That's a vulnerability in the village's system. And then Dustin's working with them right now to schedule that work to be done and located due to the number of hits that we've had on that main with private utility companies, because the marking's not there and the records aren't there to show where those crossings are at. And then, identify whatever kind of upgrades that we need at that location. And then there's several water main loop connections, dead end connections throughout the village that JD has identified, with Dustin to, make those work. So, and can be longer term projects, just something on their long-term wish list. Parks Department had quite a few items in here, lower dollar items for the majority of them, but this was kind of their wish list. Extend the parking lots at South Park to the east to accommodate additional parking. They were looking for a heat system for the concession stand to extend, their serviceability. Resurface the tennis courts at South Park. The pickleball courts got resurfaced, the tennis courts did not. And that's about time to be done. Resurface the basketball courts at the J.C.'s Park. Provide ADA accessibility to the playground equipment at South Park. We're currently out for bids for new playground equipment through that grant for South Park, and want to upgrade the ADA access to that equipment. Miscellaneous bike trail improvements, paths, fixing deteriorated pavement. Gazebo, the amphitheater, repairs, there's wind damage to that associated with the canopy there, although it is acknowledged that that does not fit into the long-term parks plan. So that was kind of one of those, do we want to fix it or do we not want to fix it, or do we want to provide some sort of facility there to make it more functional?
The gazebo or the amphitheater?
Actually,
gazebo.
Actually, the gazebo blew over the other day, and it
all the way, so it's just a concrete pad.
But a replacement for that if desired.
Yeah, I looked at that a lot lately, and I was like, how is this thing still standing? So I guess it is a surprise.
Went around it, that was holding the whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that big Christmas ornament, I think, helped.
I would like to, yeah.
It is a
See what
cool,
kind of
it is a cool element of the square, and, yeah, but, yeah, we gotta
decorations
decide
for it.
what we're gonna do.
Gotta
long.
keep it.
Well, it's gone now. We gotta rebuild. Sorry. Go ahead.
And then the big ticket items here that, agree with the long-term comprehensive plan, provide the base infrastructure for the headwaters pond there by the electric building, that would serve both as a recreational facility and, stormwater control facility. And then the associated stream naturalization through South Park, due to the deterioration of the tile system that continually backs up water through the park. So obviously those are some bigger ticket items, on the list.
Yeah, those two items real quick, not to take too much time, but the headwaters pond, I know that we had been talking about that for a while, and I think many of you guys have seen the videos and the pictures. I would be quite upset if that were my backyard, so I understand Mr. Schneider and the rest of the citizens there, want something done. I think we were talking about potential grants at some point. Is the ARPA really the best opportunity for getting funds outside of the normal budgeting process?
Originally, when the ARPA fund started out, they pretty much had narrowed it down to water projects and stormwater projects. And that was about the only two things that you could choose from. I think communities started talking to the feds and to the state, and they went back and they realized that not a lot of these communities have those two types of problems. So they did a final ruling and allowed that money to be used for anything that falls under those two categories or anything that was in a municipality's general fund, as long as it didn't exceed $10 million. So that's why all these items are listed here now as possible projects for those ARPA funds and not just the water and the sewers. Okay?
Yeah, thank you. And then the stream naturalization, we've talked about that a bit too, but, just the water that runs through South Park in high flooding areas.
They would need to go hand in hand, right, Jim? I mean, if you created the pond and you created an overflow, you have to take that water somewhere. It's going to go through the park. It's just, if we don't do the stream part that's in there, then you're just.
Typically with water projects, you want to start downstream and work your way up.
Yeah.
Would providing detention upstream help alleviate some of the flooding? Possible, but you're still going to see the widespread flooding at the park because the water will still get there.
Yeah, that was the main reason I think that, we would build the pond, was to help schedule that water delivery down towards South Park a little bit better than Mother Nature does by itself. But obviously there were other benefits with recreation and then alleviating the neighborhood.
Like Mr. Berthold said, that was essentially the main project that we had to look at when these funds first became available. We didn't have a whole lot of water mains that we had to turn around and close loops. We have a few, but it was mostly going to have to deal with a drainage type thing. And we thought, well, if this is the only project that we can work on, this might be a good place for that money to go.
And
I'm not saying that when you guys get done deciding, that isn't the decision, but we wanted to make sure that you knew that all of these other items are priority items too, okay?
And one thing to consider in terms of the detention, yes, you do knock off the peak of the flow through the park, but what's going to happen is you're going to see less water for a longer duration of period in the park. So, that amount of time that the park's wet, the amount of time that the park's, soggy or unmowable is going to be extended as a result of having the detention facility upstream if there aren't improvements made downstream.
Yep.
So, and then last one, circling back, Rebuild Illinois funding. This is an IDOT based funding. And what it was supposed to be for originally is new roadways, of which we're not really in the need for a new roadway, brand new construction. So a lot of municipalities had the same issues and they wanted maintenance money, not just, new roadway construction. So Plummer Boulevard and getting that classified through IDOT as a functional overlay, which is a structural overlay. And, that will work for that project. And looking at, resurfacing Plummer Boulevard, in addition to the patching that we're doing from Ptarmigan back over to Polecat Creek Bridge on the east side. So, this is kind of a wish list of the projects identified, both by our experience and, village staff. Actually, one more for you was the building demolition under miscellaneous. Sorry, I missed that one. Building demolition, site clearing on the west side of the square there on the recent acquisitions, by the village and preparation of future projects there. So, fell under miscellaneous at that point. So, this is what's been identified by village staff, village officials, ourselves, in terms of priority projects. As I said, a lot of projects on here. The demands far outpace the dollars available. So it is a take what you want.
You can't make these work in our budget?
Well, we can.
We don't want
We just
the
can't
answer
make
on
them
how
all,
that-
we just can't make them all fit in.
Yeah, well,
That's what we're asking for by giving you these sheets is you see the categories. Take a look at the numbers, look at the different projects and get some feedback to me off of these sheets of,
Yeah, is there anything missing from that list?
yeah. Or is it,
Either things missing on the list or the priorities that you feel, are of the biggest benefit or a need for the village. So.
Yep.
I have a small project, I think. It's painting the underpass on Plummer, under the train tracks and,
Pressure wash it.
yeah, well, I mean,
It's not as small as you think.
well, that's what I know. It's expensive but it would be nice because that's a heavily traveled road. And if we're gonna do the Plummer Boulevard stuff, I know there was some maintenance we wanted done before we attempted that, but I would like to add that to the list of some sort. There's a lot of people.
Red.
Maybe a hot pink, or maybe some blue there.
that would look great.
We could do Glenwood Titan banners.
No,
we can have a mural.
I
Can we
think
do
a pretty
mural?
gray could work. Put gray, maybe put some
No, I kinda
lights
like
on
the
there
idea.
and stuff like that.
Paint it a rust color, because that's what it's gonna turn.
Camouflage, oh, there you go, Les.
Way to go.
Yeah, you did, you asked on that one. No, I just think it
It
would.
take some time. I think the point is take some time to go through this list and
Right.
provide the feedback to Jim.
Don't take too much time.
Yeah, when do you want our
feedback?
feedback?
We have to put our program together and the board has to accept it like around the first week of April.
Okay.
Because we have to submit it. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to do all that stuff, but we have to submit something to them showing that this is how we're gonna, and the other thing is
T side.
no, on the ARPA funds too.
But the ARPA with the initial reporting period, what you had to do is if you designated that up to that $10 million revenue replacement category, that was going to suffice and you didn't have to delineate because that was your use.
Well, if that's the case, then we'll be okay.
I think that's the case.
But we get, this 1.66, we only get half of that. Now, we have half of it now, we'll get the other half next year.
Next fall.
Yeah,
This coming fall at this point.
yeah.
Okay, debate, will we get, because if we did the two combinations of the W and X on the bottom, we're gonna have to pre-fund
Spread
some
it.
of that away
Yes.
ahead. Or have a plan that will last into
Yes,
fall.
we'd have to develop ways to handle it, as would be the case with anything.
Well, first of all, we're gonna paint my overpass, and then we'll get to that.
And change the name of the road to Titan Fever. We'll do it all like
Titan Nation.
Yeah, Titan Nation.
All right,
It's no longer Plumber.
Jim's on the clock.
Hey, we got to bring some humor to this meeting.
And the A through Z is no order of priority or anything else, and that's just random list, so.
You went, you got 26 things. That's pretty good.
I didn't add any more.
Well, there could have been more.
No, not do the double A and double AB and that stuff, so.
Thank you for your
Any
time on
questions?
it. No, thank you for your time. and effort.
Thank you.
Item number 2 under new business, village manager update.
I have two things. One of them, we got noticed from the sanitary district that the rates are going up for this year. And what that will have to be is our fixed cost currently is $11.88 for every customer. And that needs to go to $12.14 to match their increase. And then the rate per thousand, so our sewage is based off of for every 1,000 gallons of water that you use, you get charged $5.08 for that for the sewer. That number needs to go to $5.34. So it's a 26-cent increase for the fixed and a 26-cent increase for every 1,000 gallons of water that you use.
When does the cost increase go into effect?
When we
If
vote on
it's,
it?
if it's passed at the next, if it's passed at the next meeting, the plan is that you have to give a 60-day notice, so it would go into effect June 1st.
Thank you. I meant the sanitary district cost, the cost to the village. When does that change? Do you know? Our sanitary district raised our rates. At what date did or you don't have to answer now. I just would like to know that with.
I think it was May 1st.
It's their fiscal year, which I
Yeah.
think is the same as our fiscal year, is where they do it. They have a projected rate scale. They actually have a published rate increase, but then what they did when they passed their long-term rate setting is they also put in a factor that on an annual basis, they will also increase by the CPI. This year, that factor, and they have a limit to the CPI, I think, which what they use is the CPI, as long as it's no greater than 4%, that CPI increase was like 7.1 this year, so they're at a 4%.
And do we know when the last time we raised the residents' sewer expense?
We didn't raise it last year, but we did raise it the year before.
So 2020.
And it's not really us raising it. It's,
Sure.
We're just passing our cost on. We're not adding anything on from our side.
And just a reminder to residents that are still watching this YouTube video, you can request a standalone meter. If you were to fill up your pool, for instance, you don't have to pay for that sewer export element of your water.
And we also offer sprinkler meters, or, you know, you can have an additional pit put in and an additional meter. And then any water that goes through that for pools or for landscaping and stuff like that, you don't pay a sewer rate on that. You just pay the water charge. The other item is I got a call yesterday from a person that was interested in acquiring a liquor license from the village of Chatham. It was a straight liquor license. It would not include gaming. It was for a business that worked with.
I think we're working through the details.
Yeah, it's kind of a catering type business, to say, where they need a location in Chatham where they can have a liquor license and then be able to do their business out of that location that is zoned for them to be able to have a liquor license. Because for the business that they're doing, they would purchase alcohol from, I'm assuming,
distributor or?
From distributors, and then possibly resell it, but not at that location. Well,
we're working with them to get through the detail. The point of this is they're looking to secure a site, and so as we continue to discuss with them what the appropriate license is, we wanted to get it in front of you so that you didn't.
And they had asked
in 2 weeks when you have your next.
They're on a time frame of they would like to have it in 2 weeks. So I will try to get information from them and get it to you as soon as possible, but I'm not even sure we could make it through the background check in a 2-week period, but we will do our best. So.
So are they hoping to have a facility in 2 weeks?
I think they want to
Have their site and be located in.
In doing business in 2 weeks, that they need this license that quick?
And as soon as we get more information from them, we will distribute it to you to let you know.
Thanks, guys.
And the last thing is, got the notice from the IBEW on union negotiations that are coming up in the end of April. And me and Greg would like to have an executive session at the end of this meeting to discuss that.
Okay.
Okay?
Anything else, Pat?
That's it.
You guys have any questions for Pat?
Yeah.
Pat, can you get the underpass painted red?
2 weeks.
I'd rather sandblast it off and just leave it concrete.
Guys.
That way when graffiti's
That's
on
great,
it,
though.
it really isn't a problem, but
That's great. Works.
Item number 3 under new business, Public Properties and Recreation Committee discussion. We actually haven't met since our previous meeting, but we do plan to meet next week, I think. So we'll hopefully have more. We'll have an update from Dustin with respect to the Parks grant and the bidding process for those items.
put your agenda together today. You have quite an agenda, so.
Yeehaw. Please come. It's next Monday, right?
Yeah, and I think they're discussing solar tech too, right?
Oh, man. That was uncalled. Yeah, you should, honestly, you should come. Please come to the Public Properties Commission. You can talk about anything you want. So, yeah, no update there. Item number 4, Utility Oversight Committee.
No, we haven't had a meeting either. And Pat, I'd like to get it on there for April 11th, 6 p.m. if we could. I just didn't, on the.
Should go on the regular board.
I didn't see it.
It's not on that one.
Yeah, so April 11th is when we'll do that, Mr. We'll try to tackle some of the billing issues you see with solar, and I'll get with you before that meeting to see what we can help with that.
We've been discussing that in the office, and we got some ideas too, so.
Good. I'll get with you too. Thank you. And then I'll pass it on to you guys. That's all we have, because we haven't met since.
Thank you. Are there any public comments regarding village business not on the agenda? Thank you. Scheduled meetings, the Committee of the Whole will meet again 6:15, April 12th, here at the Municipal Hall. I do believe there is a need for a closed session. Those needs are number 1, setting the price for sale of public property, which is 2C6. Reason 2 is personnel under 2C1. Then lastly, collective negotiating matter 2C2. So I'd entertain a motion to suspend this Committee of the Whole meeting.
Just need to move to executive session.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I entertain a motion to move to executive session, ending the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Are you sure?
No.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
My advisor's telling me.
That's not quite what you told me.
Yeah. Motion made by Trustee Gerger, seconded by Trustee Fletcher, interrupted by President Kinsey. So again, we're going to go back to executive session, have some items to discuss here, but there won't be any other village business after that meeting or after the executive session is conducted. So,
Need a voice vote.
all in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call for executive session, please.
Trustee Ferguson.
Yes.
Trustee Charles.
Yes.
Trustee Detmers.
Yes.
Trustee Gerger.
Yes.
Trustee Fletcher.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stop the broadcast.